Today is a beautiful day for science. Currently, we're looking at the M489 solar flare that was at 0236 UTC on the 27th of August of 2022 from region 3088. There was a filament eruption during that flare or flaring, and there was a post-flare CME in conjunction. The CME from the flare occurred just before the filament eruption. So we see a nice spread, but mostly westward direction, with a nice northern and southern cover from the CME from the post-flare. However, with the filament eruption, we can see a very northern thrust from where it ejected from the sun. And this is why, when looking at this, it not only launched a proton event, in which we're seeing the second proton event now hitting. Not only do we see the plasma of this extend northward and also eastward, which is the direction of Earth at this point, it's also projecting towards Earth to be a beautiful CME that we might be seeing in, let's pull up NOAA's estimates here, approximately the 28th. So in looking at the NOAA's estimations, we could be looking at an impact from this CME hitting the magnetosphere of Earth on approximately the 28th of August. So this will probably have, based on initial analysis, at least a G2 level activity in correlation. But more importantly, we're seeing a proton event, which increases the radiation activity in the upper atmosphere. This is something to pay attention to for satellite operators and astronauts and things of that nature, because it makes being in the atmosphere around the orbit of Earth far more dangerous. Fortunately, it's only at a level 1. It's not significant, and it's got a decreasing overall, so that's a good thing. But in looking at the event again, one of the things to note is that this event from the filament eruption, which is what's going to be the most impacting for us, not only launched the proton event, but also the reaction that the surface of the sun had created a nice valley from where it was, showing us very nicely where the projection was northward. So it was easier to track from there. But additional to that, it caused a lot of the potential plasma being launched from this region 3088 to be less hazardous in the oncoming events, which in this time, this is a M489 that we're viewing. This actually had at least 3 other M classes associated to this event post the significant 489, being typically an M128. There were 2 M218s and one M1.28 and one M1.29. And there may have been another one in there, but while the short wave on the GOES X-ray flux was showing the significance of it, which would have been approximately the same range, the peak of the flux was still at a, for the long wave, was still at a 1.32. So the best I could assess is that whatever the event was less than an M1.32, because the X-ray flux only shows the highest potential activity or highest active activity at that given time. Cannot unfortunately pinpoint specific activity in pinpointed areas. However, we do see that this region is highly active and high potential, and that's because the nature of it. This region has a very strong sweeping negative region, or negative energy, geomagnetic energy, in the center, while it's got strong positives on the north and the south. This is causing a conflict in its orientation, where it's constantly readjusting itself and doesn't have a decisive way to orientate itself to become stable. Therefore, it's inherently unstable. Now, post this event, we've had yet another proton event and a significant M class, in which this, however, is mostly of a westward launch, most likely will not interact with Earth, except for the proton event, of course, which we have seen signs of already, I believe. But in looking a little bit closer at the GOES imagery, the previous was SDO. This is 304 showing us the nice plasma motion that's occurring, and it shows that there's a significant amount of conflict in where the energy wants to go. So we see the positive energy sweeping back and forth, and it repels. You can see how it repels some portions of this. As you know, you have two magnets of the same energy, they push against each other, or polarity, I should say. However, this center that's negative continues to pull in and pull in and pull in from both sides, and they continue to cross, and led to another R1 and a beautiful series of solar flares, including at least 3 M classes in this situation, but had diminished already or down to the C class range. But I do suspect we will be back in the M class range probably in the next few hours, give or take, based upon the orientation of the sun. This will have minimal impact towards Earth aside from the solar flare itself, so I would not suspect any risk or necessary risk from a coronal mass ejection, but it's still something to keep in mind of if you have any kind of satellite communications or ham radio operator or anything of that nature. We might be seeing some more R1s and R2s maybe. But this still also, just a note, region 3088, due to its nature or its orientation, its structure, its design, is highly possible that we could still see an X class. But that might be after it's already occulted, where it's already off the Earth-facing disk and rotated out of view, so we're only seeing the top portion of it. And the reason I say that is because it's still navigating its upper and bottom portions, and that conflict, it hasn't seemed to have reached the center core where it has to actually initiate a complete restructuring of its center before it actually can find any kind of stabilization. And when that begins to happen, I believe it will reach X-class significance. So that's the current update. And it's a beautiful day for science. Cheers and science on.